Hi guys, what are we gonna do today? We are doing metal embossing. Let's just get started.
So what we're gonna use for this project is you're gonna need some sort of a foam mat. Then you have your surface you're working on, which is hard. So the medium surface that's not gonna be super soft like the foam or hard as a table or a clipboard, I wanted something that had a little give. So I just have a stack of paper here, or you could get construction paper, something like that that has a little give, that when you press in, it's not quite as hard as your hard surface, but not as soft as your foam surface. I'm gonna use this stamp, and then you're going to need some tools. I have listed on my favorite things some of these tools that you can pick up, and you may already have these. You might be using these for clay work or other things. And then the last thing you're gonna need is some metal. This is 38 gauge metal. I've listed a place that I have found was probably the most reasonable without being pewter. The one thing nice if you use a 40 or 38 gauge pewter metal is that as soon as you're done, you can just put an aging over it and it automatically darkens it right where you want, and it's absolutely gorgeous. When you're using a aluminum or other type of metal, you're going to have to work a little harder at getting the aging done. But the difference is $10 a foot to 25 feet for $10. So, it's up to you what you want to do. So I am using this. I kind of like that it has two colors, so I know what my front is. My front is going to be the silver, and the back is the blue on this one. This company also sells one that is in copper. So that could be kind of fun if you just wanted that copper look and add some distressing to that. The acrylic tips here, which are really, really nice. These rounded, bigger ones, if you have a big area, work well. You could also use a stylus. You just want to be careful when it's metal on metal. It can want to rip a little bit easier, so watch your pressure. But you may already have something around that you can use. So what I did is I decided I was going to cover this 5x7 board, so I cut a piece of my aluminum that size. So I'll put that aside for now. And what I'm going to do to start is I am going to stamp my image. Using a black ink with this IOD floral stamp. So your metal is going to be a little slick, so you just want to go straight down. You're going to get a big smudge. I'm just centering it. Be careful, just press down. So this is going to be my guidelines. So the reason I'm using this chipboard is that I'm just going to frame this piece. If I was putting it straight onto a piece of furniture, I wouldn't use this, but I would use a foam double-sided adhesive tape that would help fill this in. First of all, start on my hard surface, and I am using the tip that almost looks like a felt tip pen, but it's very hard. And I am going around the outside edges right here on this piece. I am going to draw all the edges that I have just stamped with this. You want to be very mindful when you're doing this that you don't press so hard that you rip your metal. So the reason I'm stamping it on the front side is I want this to be embossed and then coming up. If you wanted it de-embossed, where it goes in, you would have stamped the back side. Okay, now if you're not sure if you've done it all, you can look at the back and you're going to be able to see, did you miss something? Did you get everything you wanted? So the next step is I'm going to use my foam mat. You have it upside down, and I'm doing it from the back side on my foam mat. First thing I'm going to do is go around the inside and the outside of those raised areas that we just put on the front. It helps give you a little more definition. Be mindful that your edges will be sharp. You don't want to just run your hand over the edge. Now that I've gone around all the edges, I'm going to use my larger tool here to fill in where these larger openings are. If I'm going down and up and down and up, you can see how you're getting that fun texture in the middle of that floral. The thinner areas you will need to use a stylus or your tip again. some of these smaller areas, I will just fill in. Once again, you want to make sure you're not pressing too hard because you can rip your metal. And after you've done it a couple times, you'll feel what you can and can't do. So it might be worth just practicing on a tiny piece to see how much pressure you can put in. And you're going to be able to tell on the front what you've missed and what you haven't. You probably could use any of the surfaces. I like to use this surface. It's not too hard and it's not too soft to squish in. And then I am going to go back around my outside edges because they do push up a little when you're embossing in the back. I want to make sure my definition comes out nicely. But right here, you definitely want to be careful that you don't press too hard. I am just going to brayer this lightly. You don't want to push it all out. You can kind of smooth out some of the bubbles because when you're pushing in and out of this metal, it's going to want to pick your whole piece up. Add a little more smoothing. And a lot of it is you're going to look at both sides and decide where you want it embossed more, less, more defined. I am going to use a little bit of clay and I want to soften this down really well. And I'm going to carefully, not pressing too hard, just fill in these areas. And I'm doing this on a firmer surface and I'm just very carefully filling in some of the recessed areas. I just want this to stay stable that when you touch it on the other side, it does not indent it back in. Now I'm just using my fingers with a little bit of water just to smooth it. And this is paper clay that I'm using here. You really could use anything that could fill this cavity up that you're not putting too much pressure when you're putting it in. And like I say, use what you've got. Okay, so what I'm gonna do next is use a heavy duty double stick tape. And you can find double stick tape in large sheets. I just don't happen to have any right now, so I am just going to use this. You could probably glue it in. I just like the way this holds. I've listed this tape on my favorite things. I really like it. I got it off of Amazon. You know there's clay on here and I'm not gonna worry about it. Probably ideally you might wanna let it dry, but I am not too concerned. Pick a spot and commit to it. And I'm going around the edges, the front until I get to the front. Very carefully, I'm gonna use my brayer to make sure this is adhered really well. Since I know I'm just gonna keep this on this cardstock, I'm just gonna fold the backs back now. I'm just cutting the corners here. Okay, so now we are gonna age it. So now I cover this with a gray paint. And the reason I'm doing this is because it's not pewter, I don't want necessarily the shiny silver, and some of it will come through. I'm gonna use this gray paint. You could even use a darker gray paint. You can use any paint you want, just whatever coloring you want. I am gonna add just a little wash, a very light wash of a black paint over this gray, and it's not even quite dry. It's not even dry yet, so that's okay. So I'm gonna let this dry. I'm just gonna wipe a little bit of it off. This is dry. Once again, if you had an oxidizing metal, you could skip these parts and just go right to that. So I'm just trying to give myself that look without paying the money for it. So now I'm gonna let this dry and I'm just going to seal it. So now I'm just gonna seal it. And you could use any type of a sealer you would like. I found with this, I liked a little bit of a gloss on it. You know, you could get very creative and use like a liquid iron and a patina on this. I mean, so there are so many different options and different ways you could get the end result to look a little bit different with the colors that you love. Okay.
So we finished that one project, but I wanted to show you this before we end out here. This was same piece of metal, and what I did is I decoupaged some paper onto the front just using a decoupage medium, putting the paper on, and I did the exact same concept. Went around the different colors as my lines on the outside, did the same thing on the inside, went back around on the outside, and this is the look I achieved by using decoupage paper instead of stamping. So I hope you thought this was fun and easy. You can see this one I used a blacker background. This one I used more of the dark gray background. You can see there's so much more detail on this one. And this is the one we just did. But you can see the difference with the lines. When I added more line strokes in the back of the metal, how it does make it look different. I was thinking this could even be cute on the front of a book, maybe with a few molds around it, or on a piece of furniture, or whatever you can think of. But I hope you guys give this a try. Don't forget, in the link we'll have suggestions of places where I get my supplies at. But no matter what you do, have fun.